Imagine this for a moment. You wake up one morning, the same way you have for the last 20 years. You make breakfast, kiss your children goodbye, and go about your day as you've done countless times before. But somewhere, deep in your gut, a quiet feeling begins to grow. It's a feeling you can't shake, a nagging sense that something isn't quite right. And then, without warning, everything you thought you knew, everything you believed, begins to unravel before your very eyes. What do you do when the person you trusted most in the world shatters that trust into a million pieces? What if it's not just the betrayal of your partner, but the betrayal of the very child you've spent your life protecting? And what if, at the heart of it all, you find yourself questioning everything about your marriage, your family, and your own sense of self? I was Sarah, a stay-at-home mum, married to Josh for 20 years. I never imagined that one simple glance at his phone screen would turn my entire world upside down. One text message. Just one text that would force me to face the impossible truth. The message was from Claire, our son's girlfriend, a girl I had always considered part of the family, the girl who had been with Steve since their first year of high school. My son, my baby, had fallen in love with Claire, and somehow, Josh, my husband, the man I thought I knew, was now exchanging intimate, graphic messages with her. I felt my heart stop, my mind raced. How could I have missed this? How long had it been going on? How could Josh betray me like this? How could he betray our son? The truth was clearer than I ever wanted it to be. It wasn't just infidelity, it was a lie that stretched across every aspect of our marriage. And it wasn't just my marriage that was broken. My son's innocence, his trust in the people he loved, had been shattered. And as I stood there, holding that phone, everything that I thought defined us, our family, our life, began to fall apart. The love, the memories, the years of sacrifices, and all the things I had believed were solid foundations crumbled into dust. Was it possible to ever rebuild? Could I even look Josh in the eyes again after what I had seen? Stay with me as we unravel this painful, raw, and devastating story. A mother's heartbreak, the story of betrayal, and the soul-crushing journey of deciding what to do when everything you thought was real turns out to be a lie. As the days pass, the fear only grows stronger. The fear of confronting my husband, the fear of how this secret will destroy my son, and the fear of what it means for my future. How do you survive a betrayal like this? How do you heal when you no longer know who the people closest to you really are? What would you do? Before we dive deeper into this story today, titled A Mother's Heartbreak, the crushing secret that destroyed my marriage and my son's innocence, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying this journey, and give this video thumbs up. Your support energizes for sharing these intimate stories, and remember to turn on notifications so you won't miss any future episodes. This is my story. I'm Sarah, a woman who, like many of you, thought my marriage was built on trust. I loved Josh, I truly did, and our family, our kids, Steve and Liz, meant everything to me. I devoted myself to them, to creating a home filled with love and care. I thought I was doing everything right. Josh and I had been married for almost 20 years. We had our ups and downs, of course. There were times when life felt hard, when the routine of marriage seemed to weigh on us. The stress from his job, the challenges of raising 2 kids. I always believed these things were just part of life, nothing we couldn't handle. In fact, I thought that love, our love, was strong enough to carry us through anything. But looking back, I can see that there were small signs I ignored, small cracks, things I dismissed because I didn't want to face them. Josh was distant at times, but I convinced myself it was because of work. He would come home late, or he'd retreat into his office, and I told myself it was just the pressure of his job, but I could feel it. This quiet, creeping unease. There was an emptiness in our home that I couldn't explain. A space between us that felt too wide. His eyes, the way he looked at me, so different from the way he used to. It was as though, somehow, we had drifted apart, but I couldn't find the words to bring it up. I thought I was just being paranoid, maybe insecure, but I felt something shifting. I could sense it like a shadow in the corner of my vision that I couldn't quite reach. And then, one afternoon, everything changed. I wasn't looking for anything, I swear. I wasn't suspicious, not in the way you might think. But that afternoon, something inside me nudged me to check his phone. I don't know why. Maybe I thought it would make me feel better. Maybe I wanted to see a message from him that would tell me everything was fine, but what I found on that screen was something I could never have imagined. It was a text from Claire, my son Steve's girlfriend. Claire, the girl I had welcomed into our family as though she were my own daughter, the girl who had been with Steve since their first year of high school, the girl who had eaten dinners with us, shared laughter in our living room, and even spent holidays with us. She was family. At least, that's what I thought. The message was clear. It was like a slap across my face. I miss sucking your cock. Claire's words. I stood there, frozen. The air in the room felt heavy, like it was pressing down on my chest. My heart, it felt like it stopped. I couldn't breathe. I stared at the screen, willing my mind to make sense of it. I read it again and again. My hands began to shake. I felt dizzy, like the world around me was spinning out of control. Was this real? Was I imagining things? My eyes blurred, but the words were there. So painfully clear. How could this be happening? How could Claire, of all people, be the one to betray me like this? I couldn't wrap my head around it. My stomach twisted into knots, my mind raced, but at the same time, there was this deep, hollow ache in my chest. I wanted to scream, to throw the phone across the room, but I couldn't. I just stood there, my heart in my throat, frozen in disbelief, and then, as if on autopilot, I opened more messages. There were more. Dozens, maybe even hundreds. Messages between Josh and Claire, full of flirtation, intimate exchanges. The more I read, the more the world around me seemed to collapse. It was as if everything I thought I knew, everything I believed in, was just a lie. I couldn't stop reading. My mind wouldn't let me. It was like I was in a trance, unable to break free from the horror unfolding before my eyes. There were texts from Josh comparing me to Claire. He called me things ugly, old, fat. It was like a punch to my gut. I wanted to disappear. How could he talk about me like that? How could he betray me this way, especially with someone who had been in our lives for years? I felt every single word he said about me, like a physical blow. Each one stung, deeper than the last. I tried to convince myself it wasn't real, but it was. I could see the truth written in black and white. The man I loved, the man I had shared my life with, had been lying to me. He had been living a double life, and the worst part was, he had been doing this with Claire. Our son's girlfriend, my son's first love. How could I even begin to process this? How could I even begin to explain this to Steve, my son, the boy who had loved Claire with everything he had, the boy who looked up to Josh? How could I shatter his world too? How could I tell him that the person he trusted most, the person he admired, had betrayed him in the most cruel way imaginable? If this happened to you, what would you feel? What would you do? Would you confront your partner? Would you tell your child, knowing the heartache it would cause? Or would you keep it to yourself, trying to protect your family, even if it meant living with this unbearable weight of knowing? I didn't have the answers. I was lost, drowning in a sea of emotions. Anger, confusion, betrayal, fear, and overwhelming sadness. I didn't know how to move forward. I didn't know if I even wanted to. I had been living a lie, and I had no idea where to go from here. The truth was suffocating. Every time I tried to think clearly, it was like my thoughts were tangled in a web of pain and disbelief. My hands, still trembling, were glued to Josh's phone. I couldn't put it down. I couldn't stop reading. The messages kept coming, graphic, intimate, and cruel. It felt like they were mocking me, each word etched into my brain, burning deeper. My mind couldn't catch up with my emotions. I was lost between what I thought I knew and what I now knew to be true. In that moment, I couldn't even look at Josh, the man I had shared my life with, the father of my children. I couldn't face him. I wanted to scream at him, ask him why, but no words would come. All I could hear was the pounding of my heart, and even that seemed distant, like it was coming from far away. Everything felt like a fog, a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. What had happened to us? To me? To us as a family? How had I missed this? How had Josh slipped so far away from me, from everything we had built? Was I blind? Was I so caught up in our family life that I couldn't see the cracks in our marriage? How long had this been going on? These questions raced through my mind, one after another, each more painful than the last. I didn't have answers, but I knew one thing for sure. My entire world had shattered. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't even bring myself to speak to Josh. The thought of confronting him, of asking him to explain, was too much. I couldn't bear the idea of hearing him deny it, or worse, justify it. I couldn't face his excuses. How could he look me in the eye after what he had done, after what he had said about me? Every time I thought about it, I felt this gut-wrenching pain, this deep ache that wouldn't go away. How was I supposed to face him? How was I supposed to move forward with him after this? I didn't even recognize him anymore. And then there was Steve, my son, my precious boy. I couldn't stop thinking about him, about how this would destroy him. How could I tell him the truth? How could I tell him that the woman he loved, the woman who was practically family, had been a part of tearing apart everything we had? The thought of seeing the look on his face, of watching his world crumble, made my stomach turn. I couldn't do it, not yet. I wasn't ready. But how could I hide this from him forever? My mind was a whirlwind. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces. Josh's face full of lies, and Claire's face full of betrayal. I thought of all the moments we had shared, the times we had laughed, the vacations we had taken, the memories we had made. Were they all just lies? Were they all just part of this secret life Josh had been living? I couldn't stop asking myself these questions, but the answers didn't come. In those moments, I started to feel like I was losing myself. Like everything I had known, everything I had believed in was slipping through my fingers. I didn't know who I was anymore. I didn't know who Josh was anymore. And the scariest part was that I didn't know if I could ever trust him again. Could I even look at him the same way? Could I ever forgive him? Or was I just too broken, too shattered, to ever go back? The more I thought about it, the more I realized something. This wasn't just about Josh. This was about me. This was about my own worth, my own dignity. For so long, I had let my identity be defined by my marriage, by my role as a mother. But now, in the face of this betrayal, I had to figure out who I was on my own. I had to rediscover my strength, because right now, I felt like I had none. I didn't know how to move forward. I didn't know if I should stay and try to rebuild, or if I should leave and start over. All I knew was that I couldn't stay in this place of limbo, this place of confusion and pain. I needed clarity. I needed to make a choice. But the truth was, I was terrified. I was terrified of what would happen if I faced the truth head on, if I confronted Josh, if I told Steve what I had learned. And yet, in some small corner of my mind, I knew the truth had to come out eventually. I couldn't live in this silence forever, but what would that mean for our family, for Steve, for Liz? I had no answers. Only questions. Only fear. Fear of breaking my son's heart. Fear of the fallout, of the chaos that would follow. Fear of being alone, of losing everything I had built. Fear of losing myself. But one thing I did know, this wasn't just Josh's secret. It was mine now too, and no matter how much I wanted to bury it, to ignore it and pretend it never happened, I couldn't. It was real. The pain was real. The betrayal was real. And I had to find a way to face it, to deal with it, somehow. But as I sat there, overwhelmed by the weight of it all, a small, quiet voice inside me whispered, "You're stronger than you think." Maybe that was the first step. Maybe the journey to healing started with just that simple realization that I could survive this, that somehow I would find my way through the darkness. But how? Where do I even begin? Click subscribe and remember to turn on notifications so you won't miss any future episodes. The pain I felt wasn't just physical. It was in my mind, my heart, and deep in my soul. It was as if the very foundation of my existence had been pulled out from beneath me. There are times in life when everything you thought was solid suddenly crumbles, leaving you with nothing but dust and uncertainty. This was one of those moments. I wasn't alone in this journey, though. As much as I felt like I was the only one in the world going through this, I soon realized that betrayal is something many people face. And while no one can truly understand the depths of your pain unless they've walked that path, there are experts, therapists, and psychologists who study the human psyche, and they offer some insight that might shed light on what I was feeling. Experts say that betrayal, especially the kind of betrayal I was experiencing, can fundamentally break down a person's ability to trust. It's not just about the individual who betrayed you, it's about your relationship with the world and the people in it. When trust is broken like this, the brain's wiring is affected. Healing isn't about just forgetting or moving on, because let's face it, how could you forget something like this? It's about rebuilding trust, but that process is incredibly difficult, especially when every fiber of your being wants to just walk away. Therapists explain that infidelity is often linked to emotional disconnection. In my case, I had spent so many years feeling distant from Josh, always telling myself it was just a phase or we were just too busy. But experts believe that for some, infidelity becomes a way of coping with unmet emotional needs. It's not just about sex, it's about longing, about needing something that's been missing for so long. It could be the attention, the emotional intimacy, or even the validation that one partner feels they aren't receiving at home. It made me question, had Josh been looking for something from Claire that he couldn't find with me? Had I been so caught up in my own world that I didn't see his needs? I felt like I was drowning in a sea of confusion and betrayal. I wanted to scream, I wanted to run, but nothing felt like it could relieve the suffocating grip of the hurt I felt. The emotional stages I was going through were textbook. I didn't know it at the time, but looking back, I can see them clearly now. First came shock. When I saw those texts, it felt like I had stepped out of my own body. I couldn't process what I was seeing. I kept telling myself it wasn't real, that maybe I had misunderstood. But denial couldn't hold up for long. Anger followed quickly. How could he do this to me? To our family? To our son? It wasn't just that he had cheated. It was the way he had devalued me, the way he had written off everything we had built together. It felt like all those years of love, of memories, of intimacy were worth nothing. I had given him everything, and he had betrayed me, with someone I considered family. Then came sadness, the overwhelming sadness that swallowed me up. I mourned not just the loss of my marriage, but the loss of myself. Who was I now? How could I ever trust anyone again? How could I face the people I loved, especially my children, with this secret weighing me down? These stages didn't happen in a nice linear fashion. They overlapped, swirled around me, and sometimes they came crashing in all at once. Some days I felt like I couldn't even get out of bed. Other days, I was consumed with anger, so fierce that I didn't know how to contain it. It was as if I was being pulled in every direction, and there was no stability to hold on to. I know now that these emotions are normal. They're part of the healing process, even though they feel like they're slowly tearing you apart. But there is hope. It's hard to see it in the moment, but the healing journey is about finding a way to rebuild, to make peace with what's been broken, and maybe most importantly, to rebuild trust, not necessarily with the person who hurt you, but with yourself. Have you ever been betrayed? I know some of you are nodding right now, feeling that same pain, that same weight I did. How did you heal? What did it take to move forward? It's not easy, but the journey to recovery starts with acknowledging the hurt, sitting with it, and deciding whether or not you're ready to rebuild. For me, I had to confront the reality that I could not change the past, but I could change how I responded to it. Whether or not I chose to heal, whether or not I chose to forgive, to trust again, was within my control. That was the first step. Regaining my own power, my own sense of self, even when it felt impossible. I still don't know the full extent of what comes next. The future is uncertain, and I have a long road ahead, but I do know this. Healing begins with a choice, and I'm beginning to believe that even in the face of betrayal, I can rebuild. It may not be with Josh, it may not be the way I imagined, but I can rebuild me. If you've experienced betrayal, know this. The path to healing isn't simple, and it certainly isn't quick. But it is possible. You are not alone. Click subscribe, and remember to turn on notifications so you won't miss any future episodes. Even though my heart felt completely shattered, I knew that if I didn't start to rebuild, I would lose everything that mattered most to me. The road to healing wasn't clear, and it certainly wasn't easy. Every step forward felt like walking through fire, each one heavier than the last. There were days when I thought I couldn't take another breath, but there was also a small flicker inside me, an ember of hope, that refused to die. I began to take those first painful steps. therapy was one of the first things I turned to. At first, I didn't want to go. I didn't want anyone to see the devastation that was consuming me. I was ashamed, embarrassed, and so deeply hurt that I couldn't even form a full sentence about it. But slowly, through the sessions, something began to shift. The therapist didn't promise me healing, but she did promise me something that felt just as important: the space to grieve, to feel the weight of what had happened, and to let those feelings out without judgment. Through therapy, I began to understand something I hadn't before. Healing wasn't just about getting over what had happened. It was about understanding what had happened and eventually reclaiming pieces of myself that had been lost in the process. For so long, I had defined myself by my relationship with Josh and by the idea of family. When that was shattered, I didn't know who I was anymore. Therapy helped me see that I was still Sarah, broken, but still me. There were so many difficult conversations, though. I had to sit with Josh and confront the elephant in the room: the betrayal, the lies, the shattered trust. It was a conversation that neither of us wanted to have, but it was necessary. At first, all I could hear was my voice trembling as I spoke about the pain. How could he have done this to me? How could he have broken the one thing I held most precious? Our family. Josh's apologies came in waves, sometimes feeling genuine, sometimes hollow. But it wasn't about his apologies anymore. It wasn't even about what he was going to do to make things right. The real work was mine. I had to figure out how I was going to move forward, whether or not I was ready to forgive, and what I needed to heal. But one thing became clear. The first step wasn't about forgiving him. It was about forgiving myself. I had to remind myself that I was worthy, that my heart was valuable, and that this betrayal wasn't a reflection of my worth. It was so easy to fall into the trap of self-blame, to wonder if I had done something wrong or if I was somehow less than. But I had to stop that cycle. Healing comes from within, and if I was going to rebuild, I had to reclaim my sense of self-worth. At first, it was small moments. Getting out of bed each day, making it through a conversation with Josh without completely falling apart, choosing to be kind to myself instead of constantly berating myself. Then there were the bigger victories. Deciding to set boundaries with Josh, not just in our relationship, but in how I wanted to be treated moving forward. I had to stop allowing myself to be someone's second choice. I had to stop letting my own pain be dismissed. It wasn't easy. There were moments when I doubted myself, when I wondered if I was just fooling myself into thinking I could ever trust Josh again, or if I was just trying to make things work for the sake of our kids. But each time, I took a step toward healing, whether it was speaking up for myself or learning how to let go of the anger. I felt a little stronger. Throughout all of this, the love I had for my children remained constant. They were my lifeline. They didn't know what was happening beneath the surface, but I couldn't let them suffer because of my pain. I had to protect them. I knew that no matter what happened between Josh and me, I was still their mother, and that would never change. I had to hold it together for them, even when I felt like I was falling apart. There were days when I couldn't keep the tears from flowing in front of them, and I hated myself for it. But slowly, I started to realize that healing wasn't just about me. It was about protecting them from the pain I was bearing. I didn't want them to feel the weight of the brokenness in our home, so I made sure they felt loved and safe, no matter what was happening between their father and me. In time, our family dynamic started to shift. Josh and I weren't the same couple we once were. Our relationship had been irreparably changed by the betrayal. The trust that had once been the foundation of our marriage felt like sand slipping through my fingers. But even though our marriage may never be the same, there was something beautiful that emerged from the ashes of it all. My inner strength. I had rediscovered my power. I learned that I could stand on my own, even if the ground beneath me was shaking. I didn't need to hold on to the past to find peace. I could choose to move forward, even if that meant rebuilding my life without Josh by my side. It wasn't about making the marriage work. It was about making me work. The healing journey isn't smooth and it isn't quick. Some days I'm still angry, some days I still feel lost, but there are more days now where I feel like myself again, where I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, where I believe that one day the pieces of me that were broken will fit back together, even if they don't fit the same way they did before. And maybe, just maybe, this experience, as painful as it has been, will lead me to a stronger, more empowered version of myself, one who knows her worth, who knows her boundaries, and who will never let anyone take away her power again. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean everything will be perfect. But it does mean that you can rise from the ashes, even if you're still carrying some of the scars. And one day, those scars might just be the reminder of how far you've come. Click subscribe and remember to turn on notifications so you won't miss any future episodes. No one ever expects betrayal to happen. It's something you can never truly prepare for. When it does, it forces you to face parts of yourself you never thought you would have to. You suddenly find yourself questioning everything. The relationship, the person you thought you knew, and even your own worth. For me, betrayal wasn't just about losing trust in Josh, it was about losing trust in my own judgment. I think the hardest part of this experience wasn't just the act itself, it was the feeling of disbelief. How could this happen to me? How could someone I loved, someone I trusted with my life, betray me so completely? It was an emotional shock that rattled me to my core. But the real journey didn't start with the betrayal. It started when I realized that I had to rebuild, not just my relationship with Josh, but myself. When love is broken, it's not about rushing to repair it. It's about understanding what happened, what went wrong, and where you need to heal first. What do you do when your heart is shattered, when the person you trusted most breaks you in ways you never thought possible? That's the question I kept asking myself in those dark moments. And slowly, through the pain, I realized healing is a journey. It doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen in a straight line. It's a process of rediscovery, of reclaiming who you are, both in your relationship and as an individual. If you find yourself in a place of heartbreak, especially after betrayal, know this. Healing is not something that can be rushed. It's okay to feel the pain. It's okay to let yourself cry, scream, or be angry. The important thing is to feel it. Don't bottle it up, don't ignore it, and don't push it away. You'll only prolong the healing process. It's okay to not be okay for a while. Remember, it's not about rushing to forgive the person who hurt you. Forgiveness comes in time, if and when you're ready. It's about understanding yourself first, what your needs are, what your boundaries are, and what you need to heal. For me, that meant figuring out who I was outside of my marriage, outside of being a mother and a wife. It was about reclaiming my worth and remembering that I didn't need anyone's validation to feel valuable. Start small, take care of yourself, do things that make you feel good, even if it's just a little moment of peace. Take time for your mind, your body, and your spirit, whether that's seeing a therapist, talking to a friend, or taking a long walk by yourself. Find what helps you connect back to yourself. And if you're in a relationship where trust has been broken, take your time to reflect on whether this is something that can be healed, or if it's time to let go. There's no shame in walking away. Sometimes, healing means learning when to move on, even if that's one of the hardest decisions you'll ever make. I know how isolating betrayal can feel. It makes you think that no one else could possibly understand the depth of the pain you're going through. But the truth is, so many people have faced this same type of heartbreak, and sharing your story can help you heal. And it can help others heal too. If you've ever been betrayed, I'd love for you to share your story in the comments. How did you cope with the pain? What helped you heal? Was it therapy, self-reflection, or finding strength in yourself that got you through? I know each story is different, but I truly believe there's power in sharing. You're not alone, even when it feels like you are. Take a moment to reflect on your own journey, whether you're currently facing betrayal or you've walked through it in the past. Healing is possible, even when it seems impossible. And it starts with the decision to heal, to prioritize yourself, to rebuild, and to trust that you can rise again, stronger than before. If you've found comfort in this story, if it's helped you reflect on your own journey or given you a new perspective, please share this video with someone who may need to hear it. Healing is a process, and no one should go through it alone. Make sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss more stories like Sarah's, stories of heartbreak, healing, and strength. And if you'd like to continue this conversation or hear more about overcoming betrayal and finding healing, be sure to check out our next video. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for allowing me to share this story with you. Remember, no matter where you are in your journey, healing is possible. You have the strength inside you to rise from this. Just take it one step at a time. Click subscribe and remember to turn on notifications so you won't miss any future episodes. Thank you for staying with me through Sarah's story. I know this wasn't easy to hear, and if you're going through something similar, I want you to remember, you are not alone. I know that when you're in the middle of pain like this, it feels like the world is crumbling around you, and everything you thought you knew has been shattered. But just as Sarah's story shows, there is always hope. Healing doesn't happen overnight, and it might not be the path you expected. But every step, even the hardest ones, takes you closer to reclaiming yourself and your peace. I want you to know that there is a community here. In this space, we support each other through life's toughest moments. I'm here for you, and so are all the others who have been through their own battles. Whether you're just beginning to heal or you're still fighting through the pain, remember, you're not alone. If Sarah's journey resonates with you, I highly recommend checking out our next video on rebuilding trust in relationships. Trust is one of the hardest things to rebuild after betrayal, but it is possible. We'll dive deeper into how you can start healing those wounds, both in yourself and in your relationships. And if you're looking for more advice on self-love, boundary setting, or finding strength after heartbreak, be sure to stay tuned. We'll be exploring those topics in upcoming videos. Don't miss out on these vital steps to healing and finding the resilience within you. If you've found comfort, hope, or inspiration in today's video, I encourage you to subscribe to our channel. There are so many more stories of resilience, love, and healing that we'll be sharing, and I don't want you to miss any of them. And if you know someone who might be going through something similar, or who just needs a little encouragement today, please share this video with them. You never know how much a simple act of kindness and understanding can change someone's day, or even their life. Once again, thank you for joining me on this journey. Remember, healing is possible, and no matter where you are in your journey, you are worthy of love, peace, and a future that is brighter than the pain you feel today. Keep moving forward, and let's continue to heal together. Until next time.